Hello, and welcome to Legal Management Talk, the official podcast of the Association of Legal Administrators. I'm your host, Justin Eskenazi. So our guest today is Jeremy King, who is a partner at Olshan Frome Wolosky, and is the firm's chair of insurance coverage law practice, which means that he focuses on insurance coverage actions and other civil litigation matters. So he's going to talk to us today about cyber insurance and how important that is for law firms. So first of all, welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you, Justin. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I'm sure for a lot of people, when they hear the word insurance, their eyes cross, or they think, oh, I can't possibly understand that. But I feel like we should have like a red flashing light and warning sirens and everything, because cyber insurance is, so important in this day and age. Most especially for business continuity and everything like that. So could you first kind of describe what cyber insurance is, what it means for firms, and why it is so crucial that they pay attention to this topic?
Yeah, certainly. And look, I agree with you. You mentioned insurance, and most people's eyes just sort of glaze over. And you think of this thing that you have to buy, in connection with your home or with your car or something like that, that hopefully you never actually have to use and you just pay for. But especially for an administrator of a company, insurance is really about risk mitigation and sort of loss allocation in case things happen. And in this day and age, the reporting is out there, especially from the FBI. Cyber loss and cybercrime is way up. Law firms are increasingly becoming targets of this kind of attack because of the confidential and proprietary information they contain inside their servers. So I, as a practicing courtroom lawyer, I deal often with the claims side. What happens after a bad event? How do you get carriers to pay on those coverages? But I'm also asked frequently to consult on the underwriting or the placement side. What kinds of coverages do we need? What risk transfer mechanisms should we be looking at for our company? What risk vectors might there be? And in particular, does my policy really cover the risks that it presented to my company? And for law firms, that's certainly both malicious attacks of their servers, their hardware systems, but it also certainly extends to phishing attacks, exposures from work from home environment in the modern era, and even all the way to something like cyber extortion. If folks can get inside your systems, it's a very real risk of loss to a law firm.
So I know that's kind of the broad overview, but what kind of cyber events are you seeing happening most to law firms nowadays?
Look, I would say the most common thing, and I do work for a number of law firms on a number of coverage issues, but the most common thing, frankly, is the phishing attack. Is something where somebody is impersonating or spoofing an email, whether it's a client or it's a partner at the firm or somebody in firm administration issuing instructions. There's a number of ways that these scams come about. And I get, at least one a quarter, if not once a month, not all from law firms, but some from clients and some from law firms as clients that have a problem where money has been transferred or sent somewhere on the basis of an instruction that's essentially fraudulent. The FBI is reporting, again, an uptick in things like cyber extortion and those sorts of issues. But still, for me, the most prevalent thing is what I would think of as the fraud by trick type hacking situation.
Right. And so without insurance, what are the consequences of falling for those kind of tricks?
Unfortunately, without insurance, and frankly, even with insurance, payments that are made fraudulently are unpaid. The contractual responsibility still exists to pay the vendor if you sent the vendor's money somewhere else, even if it was a trick, even if through no fault of your own. For law firms, those issues, the ante is upped a little bit because law firms have specific responsibilities, in particular for client funds. Sometimes you see these scams come through, and it's a quick settlement scam or something like that, where the firm is being instructed to disperse funds out of what we in New York would call our IOLA account, which is really the client's money, and send it somewhere. And that can have horrendous repercussions on a law firm when it turns out that that is not a true instruction from the client, but in fact somebody trying to run a scam on the law firm.
Right. So if I'm looking to get cyber coverage for my firm, what are the first steps that I should be taking when I'm looking into that?
Certainly. I mean, first, I would assume any risk manager for a law firm has a good working relationship with a brokerage to place their coverage, in particular their malpractice coverage. I suspect that you have available to you a sort of a packaged policy situation that would take care of your professional liability for the law firm, that you could bundle in with your cyber policy for premium breaks. That's not necessarily true. I am not a broker. I don't participate in the marketplace, but I have seen packaged products like that for law firms. But you work through with your broker, and the very first thing you should do is identify those areas or vectors of risk that you might have. Where is confidential client information stored? Where is protected personal information stored if you have those sorts of things with your law firm? Are those systems accessed through what computer systems? And then what aggressive outside hacking could take place to attack those systems. Secondarily, law firms are mobile places these days. Everybody's got a smartphone. Lots of people work from home. What kinds of authentication systems and security protections do you have in place for your users, for your attorney who is banging out a confidential settlement agreement on an important case at the terminal in an airport where they may be on free access public Wi-Fi? What are the risks there, and what kinds of security systems do you have, sort of onboarded on the firm's hardware hopefully the firm's hardware that's being used, and not their personal computer for doing that kind of work. And I think you will find that during the underwriting process, the insurance carriers will work with you in terms of systems to put in place and best practices. They're more than happy to help with that kind of loss mitigation. But really, the first step is going through your broker, who is your mouthpiece in the marketplace, and identifying those areas of risk to your law firm.
And when it comes to the marketplace, what kind of coverages are we seeing come available, and what's and also the affordability aspect, because I know that's bottom line is obviously always important to any business, including firms.
Yeah, and it does dovetail with that earlier question you asked about essentially the fraud by trick, or what the insurance carriers would call social engineering. It is a buzzword to look for in your policies, because it's what you and I would think of as phishing, the scam, the email scam that comes in. Very traditional cyber packages are designed around either a denial of service attack or a physical intrusion into your hardware, and the changing of data or bad instructions coming from essentially inside the firm's hardware, rather than tricking somebody to sending something out. And I bring that up just because that is usually an add-on rider, can usually be an additional cost. Often it is sublimited, which means you may have a $1 million policy, but the carrier will only apply, say, $250,000 to that sublimited coverage. So it's important to look at, because it's an important risk vector. That said, overall, and again, I don't participate in the marketplace, but it is widely reported overall that cyber premiums are increasing just year after year. That said, this most recent year, there have been a number of entries into the marketplace. In other words, a number of new companies that are underwriting cyber insurance, or old underwriters that are expanding their books and allowing for more of cyber risk. So the numbers have dwindled a little bit. I think across all industries, they said premiums were going up about 17% in the Q4 of last year, of 2022, as opposed to about 31% in the Q4 of the prior year. So they're plateauing a little bit as the market itself is just increasing in size, so that there are more people competing for these premiums. But that said, premiums are going up in the cyber world, and are predicted to continue to, although not rise at such a great rate. Some of this is, again, I hope, as there becomes much more industry standardization in terms of security, et cetera, those prices will level out. But cyber does always have the problem that you're trying to stay ahead of nefarious actors, and those actors are incredibly clever and think of a new problem or a new vector, and so there's always that uncertainty, as opposed to more traditional insurance areas like fire or products liability or something like that.
Right. Now I want to touch on a couple more things, and the first is the issue of crisis response. So let's say something, attack does happen. What is the best way for firms to respond to that in, let's say, the short to medium term, and how can insurance play a role in supporting that?
It's a terrific question, frankly, for law firms. And I want to go actually even to an earlier step than short to medium term. And this is the before term. Typically, your policy, your cyber policy, and a number of other coverages, but your cyber policy will have preferred vendors in it. It should have crisis response costs. It should have costs put in place for the reporting that's required under various state statutory schemes to make sure all those costs are covered. But in particular, they likely will have both forensic and PR vendors or preferred, experts to assist the firm that you may be required to use under the terms of the policy. And I would just point out to administrators out there that the time to look at those requirements is not after an event happens when you're trying to respond, but during underwriting. You as a law firm may have a relationship with an outside PR company that knows your firm well. You may have a relationship with outside IT and forensics vendors, people that you want to use to respond to the problem. And it is far easier to negotiate with your carrier, perhaps get a specialty endorsement put on your policy, recognizing your preferred providers, rather than adding to the number of issues that you're going to have to deal with after an event happens. I can't say uniformly that's available. Often these arrangements by the providers are done on a sort of exclusivity basis, right? They give discounted rates, and they will be recommended on these policies. But again, the time to try to do that is during underwriting, rather than trying to make the insurance company change its mind or a policy term mid-crisis. That said, you should have a crisis response team at your firm. You should give notice to the carrier as soon as you're able to, and have somebody really look at your policy to see when that notice is due. But you want to make sure as soon as you can before you're incurring costs that the insurer knows about that, and hopefully will consent or at least not object to those costs, because the timelines on these things are sort of very short term, especially in terms of reporting to clients, if anybody gets into actual confidential client information. Then hopefully you've got a team put together that you approve of, that works very well with your team and knows your firm. And then it should be a simple task of coordination with them. It certainly will be a complex in terms of dealing with the aftermath, but assuming the people are in place that work well with your team, then it is keeping the insurer in the loop, reporting on the situation, keeping very careful track of your costs in each sort of cost bucket. Anybody who deals with insurance knows that one of the hardest things to do is sort of recreate what was done and justify it under the policy. It makes sense to have your crisis team up to speed on that, immediately. And in fact, one of the things I do is usually I get a call. We've had this problem. Can you look at our policies and tell us both whether there are requirements in there we have to follow, and then how we should be portioning out our costs and paying attention to this loss going forward.
Great. That's a pretty comprehensive plan. So the last thing is the question of kind of regulation and requirements. I know when you were talking before this, that you said there's a new rule requiring public companies and they're reporting on cyber issues. But as far as law firms go and private companies, are there any requirements for cyber insurance, or is it simply you really should have this, but it's not required that you have it?
Right. Yeah, you're exactly right. And I'm sure, anybody listening to this, your law firm is going to see an uptick of inquiries because the SEC has just, within the last month, implemented new reporting rules for public companies in terms of both disclosure of material events and then also their annual reporting requirements and cyber risk and governance. As of right now, and I should qualify, this is a sort of a state by state issue, I'm sure, for the regulation of law firms. I don't know of any requirements that are in place that you must guard against this cyber risk. I would not be surprised if the ABA started to take a look at this, especially given remote work and our reliance on computer infrastructure, to at least issue guidance out to law firms as part of your professional responsibilities in terms of the level of security and attention that needs to be given to these issues kind of in the modern era. I know, one of the things they've started to talk about is the use of other technology, for instance, in discovery. And it seems just a natural corollary that the ABA would start to talk about what it means to be a modern law firm and rely on these things while maintaining confidentiality of information. But as of right now, I don't know of any jurisdiction in which it would be required to have this kind of coverage. It's simply, I think, given where law firms sit and given what kind of information that's potentially valuable sits on their servers, and frankly, given what would happen in terms of the interruption to the business if, for instance, somebody was able to ransom a server and close down a firm for a period of time, the loss of productivity, et cetera. It's very wise to guard against that. Law firms, this kind of, we think of it as business interruption coverage, but this is available also in the cyber world, a coverage to protect the income the firm would be generating, but it can't because it's locked out of its systems in some kind of cyber ransom. And then, of course, there's also coverage in place to pay that ransom if that's the way the firm decides in conjunction with authorities and the insurer, et cetera.
Awesome. Well, thanks again so much for being here, Jeremy. I appreciate the you providing some clarity on the topic of insurance, which I feel like we don't get very often. So, I appreciate you explaining everything. Well,
look, I'm happy to do it. Thank you for having me. I'd be happy to talk on any other sort of risk transfer issues you have, but. Again, sophisticated law firms are right, I think, in the crosshairs of folks that may be, looking for a good way to maliciously attack some company and get useful information. So they do need to be on the lookout for cyber issues. As I said, I've counted them frequently at this point, and it has certainly been ramping up over the past, call it 7 or 8 years.
Right. Well, hopefully firms are now paying attention and will, put in the work to prevent those. So, we will see. And thanks so much for being here. And thanks to our viewers and subscribers for tuning in. If you want more legal management talk, you can check us out on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to our channel, and you can check out the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can learn more about ALA at alanet.org. Until next time.